In every photo of world leaders, one figure stood calm while others argued. She didn't shout, she didn't threaten, yet entire continents waited for her word. Angela Merkel, a scientist from East Germany who became Europe's last steady hand. But who was she really? Angela wasn't dreaming of power. She studied quantum chemistry. Her world was atoms and equations, not politics. But when the wall fell in 1989, her quiet precision met a chaotic world, and history pulled her in. In 1990, after reunification, Merkel was elected to parliament. Few noticed her then, but she rose fast. By 1994, she was environment minister. By 2000, she led the CDU. The quiet physicist had become Germany's most powerful woman. Germany had changed. The Berlin Wall was gone, and with it came a united, powerful nation at the heart of Europe. Merkel's rise mirrored her country's. Steady, unexpected, inevitable. By 2005, she became chancellor, the first woman, the first East German. Then came the Eurozone crisis. Banks collapsed. Greece teetered. The euro trembled. Leaders panicked. But Merkel stood still. She imposed strict reforms on Greece. Painful cuts for financial lifelines. Critics called her cold, but she held the currency together. She never sought a crown. Yet Merkel became Europe's queen in all but name. While others shouted, she calculated. She kept the EU alive through recession, and her voice carried farther than any man's. She ruled through reason and endurance. In 2015, over 1 million refugees fled to Europe. Many leaders slammed their doors. Merkel opened Germany's. "Wir schaffen das," she said. "We can do this." It was bold. It was human. It was the beginning of her fall. Then came New Year's Eve in Cologne. Mass assaults shocked the nation. Public opinion turned. The far right rose. Merkel, once mutti to all, faced jeers instead of cheers. Her greatest act of humanity became her biggest political wound. By 2018, the coalition frayed. Merkel stepped down as party leader, not with rage, not with drama, but as always, quietly. She would stay until 2021, then leave the world stage. But the question still hung in the air. Who could possibly replace her? After Merkel, the center weakened. Nationalists surged in Poland, Hungary, Italy. Britain had already walked away. Without her, Europe felt rudderless, not because she was loud, but because no one else had her silence, her calm, her discipline. Merkel once said, "Politics is not about being loud, it's about solving problems." She never courted fame. She didn't tweet. She didn't boast. She simply endured. In a world of chaos, she was a metronome. Angela Merkel never wanted to be a symbol, but in the end, that's what she became. The last defender of European unity, the scientist who became a stateswoman, the woman who didn't break even when everything else did. She was raised under the Stasi. She ruled over free markets. She feared cults of personality, and that fear made her dangerous, not because she wanted control, but because she resisted it. Angela Merkel was proof that quiet minds can move empires. In a political world driven by outrage, Merkel was boring, deliberate, measured. She had no corruption charges, no personal wealth empire, no messy affairs. Her biggest scandal? Wearing the same blazer in multiple colors, and yet she outlasted them all. Some called her the machine. She read every file, remembered every detail. At summits, she outlasted every man in the room. Hours of negotiation, no outbursts, no caffeine, just control. Power wasn't her addiction, competence was. To struggling countries, she was the iron banker. To German taxpayers, the quiet protector. She loaned billions, but never without strings. She kept the euro stable, but trust fragile. History still debates. Was she saving Europe or punishing it? Wir schaffen das. We can do this. She believed Germany could absorb over 1 million refugees. At first, many cheered. But when things got hard, Merkel stood alone. Courage is lonely, and political courage is punished. In the void of fear, a new voice grew louder. The AfD, Germany's far-right party, fed on anti-migrant anger, and won votes Merkel had once held. She had calmed Europe. But now her own house was shaking. Merkel never made herself a brand. No "Make Germany Great Again." No giant rallies, no personal Twitter. She was powerful, but invisible. And maybe that's why she lasted so long. She was never bigger than the office. In 2021, Merkel attended her final EU summit. Other leaders gave speeches. She didn't. No farewell tour, no legacy parade, just one last quiet negotiation. And then she left, like a shadow fading at dawn. Now the seat is empty. Her successors come and go, but none carry her gravity, not yet. The world moves faster, louder, meaner, and Europe looks back at the woman who kept it together with silence and science. In a world obsessed with charisma, Merkel proves something radical. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't need to dominate to lead. You just have to show up, know your work, and endure the storm without losing yourself. The Merkel era is over. But her shadow stretches long. She left behind no memoir, no statue, just 16 years of quiet decisions that shaped a continent. And a reminder that sometimes the strongest voice is the one that doesn't shout. After Merkel, Europe drifted. Crises didn't stop. Russia invaded Ukraine. Inflation soared. The pandemic lingered. But something felt different. There was no steady hand in Berlin, no soft-spoken scientist to call for calm. And Europe missed her, even those who once criticized her. Where Merkel ruled with quiet authority, her successors ruled with noise. Italy turned right. France polarized. Britain fractured. Germany, it stumbled, unsure how to follow a woman who led without spectacle, but always with stability. With Bush, she was careful. With Obama, respectful. With Trump, restrained and unyielding. Merkel never let personal feelings define diplomacy. She held Germany steady even when America wobbled. She didn't chase headlines, she chased balance. She wasn't like Thatcher, iron-fisted and combative. Nor like Ardern, warm, modern, emotional. Merkel was something else. Pragmatic, patient. A strategist without vanity. She didn't try to inspire. She tried to solve. That was her revolution. She read science reports cover to cover. She understood risk models, not just political optics. When COVID came, she listened to epidemiologists, not populists. Her briefings were methodical. She didn't sell hope. She explained reality. Her critics say she waited too long, compromised too much, avoided bold vision, that she managed decline rather than built the future. And maybe they're right. But they forget. She inherited chaos and left order. She inspired not with charisma, but with clarity. For girls in science, for women in politics, for anyone who felt too quiet to lead, Merkel became the proof. You can change the world without changing yourself. Merkel taught us, master your brief, say little, listen more, never believe your own myth, and remember, if you stay calm in crisis, you will become the one others turn to. That's how quiet people move history. The world Merkel left is louder, faster, and more fragile, but her fingerprints remain on the euro, on NATO, on the idea of a united Europe. She wasn't the kind of leader we celebrate with statues. She's the kind we remember when things fall apart. When asked how she wanted to be remembered, Merkel answered, as someone who did her job. No more, no less. In an age of ego, she chose duty. In an age of rage, she chose reason, and that might be her greatest legacy. In the 21st century, leaders became influencers. Merkel refused. She had no Instagram, no slogans, no fireworks, but she offered something rarer, stability. In her hands, Germany became a symbol of calm in a world spinning faster every year. Merkel wasn't a visionary. She was a builder of coalitions, of consensus, of reluctant agreements that kept things from falling apart. Where others saw chaos, she saw patterns, and in compromise, she found power. Greece begged for mercy. Merkel offered math. Bailouts came, but with brutal austerity. Pensions were slashed. Jobs disappeared. Protests erupted. She was called a tyrant, but Merkel believed without rules the union would break. Merkel never invaded, never shouted, never threatened. But no major EU policy passed without her nod. No crisis calmed without her signal. That's soft power. But hers was forged from discipline, not charm. Terror shook Europe. Paris, Brussels, Berlin. While others locked down, Merkel stood tall. She mourned with silence, not sound bites. She tightened security, but defended values. No Muslim bans, no fear-mongering, just steadiness. She opened Germany's doors, not because it was popular, but because she believed it was right. 1 million came. Some thrived, some didn't. She paid the political price, but she never walked it back. Merkel had no children. Some questioned her empathy, but her legacy became generational. She raised no heirs, but mentored a continent, and her absence now feels like a missing parent. She didn't govern in peacetime. She governed through a financial collapse, a migrant wave, a pandemic, Trump, Brexit, Putin. Her legacy is not perfect, but it is made of survival. The world forgot how to be quiet, but Merkel didn't. She proved strength can come without spectacle, and that silence, in the right hands, can be louder than thunder. Historians don't agree yet. Was she too cautious, too slow, too stable? But one thing is clear. When others broke under pressure, Merkel didn't. She held the center when the world tilted sideways. Merkel entered a world run by men. They underestimated her, called her dull, cold, uncharismatic. But one by one they fell. She didn't play their game. She rewrote it and left quietly after outlasting them all. She ruled the West, but never forgot the East. Merkel grew up where speech could get you jailed. That made her cautious, but brave in different ways. She knew what it meant to earn freedom and to protect it. From Africa to Asia, leaders sought her counsel. She wasn't flashy, but she listened. Merkel became the de facto elder of the West, the one who didn't panic, didn't posture, just decided. As environment minister in the 90s, she pushed for action. As chancellor, she phased out nuclear energy. But Germany still relied on coal. Her green legacy? Mixed. She saw the threat, but feared rapid change. No, yes, we can. No America first. No take back control. Merkel had no catchphrases, only policies, only spreadsheets, only choices, sometimes painful, often dull, but deeply real. Merkel's departure wasn't a fall, but a fade. Her successors stumbled, coalitions weakened, voters felt adrift, not because she was perfect, but because no one had her gravity. She didn't just lead, she filled a space no one else could. She held back when others lunged. She waited when others rushed. Restraint isn't popular, but it's what kept the EU from fracturing. Merkel proved that sometimes not acting is the bravest act. Merkel never clung to office. She never rewrote constitutions, never jailed critics, never declared herself indispensable. And that, in today's world, makes her rare, and maybe makes her great. She left no chosen heir, no Merkelism, just a vacuum. And across Europe, strong men rushed in to fill the silence she left behind. Today's leaders chase virality, followers, algorithms. But Merkel chased stability. She didn't spin, she steered. In a world without compasses, she was one. The Berlin Wall came down, but Merkel carried it with her. Its silence, its paranoia, its lessons. She didn't fight the Cold War with weapons. She outlived it. She forgave African debt, funded women's education, hosted leaders rarely seen in Berlin. Her foreign policy wasn't just westward, it was wide. She didn't want an empire. She wanted equilibrium, left or right. Merkel chose center, not because it was safe, but because it was under attack, and someone had to hold it. When fire came from both flanks, she didn't move. You don't need charisma to lead. You don't need a brand to matter. You need courage, discipline, and an honest compass. Merkel never inspired crowds, but she carried nations. Some leaders define eras with war, some with words. Merkel defined hers with endurance. History may not carve her in marble, but it will remember her as the woman who held Europe when no one else could. One. Time doesn't care about headlines. It erodes hype and rewards resilience. In the end, the judgment won't be about popularity, but permanence. And Merkel? She endured longer than anyone thought she would. When Europe began tearing at the seams, Merkel became the last bridge, not always loved, not always right, but always there, steady when others swayed. She held the cracks long enough for others to cross. While tempers rose, Merkel stayed cool. Cool under fire, cool under pressure, cool in chaos. In a world that rewards fury, she made calm a kind of rebellion. She made mistakes. Too slow on climate, too lenient with autocrats, too strict with Greece. But her failures were never reckless. They were the price of caution. And her record, like her legacy, was never simple. She never gave fiery speeches, never rallied crowds, but her silence spoke volumes. Her quiet presence tamed louder men, and in the end, her work outlasted their words. She left, and something shifted. The halls echoed, summits scattered, the center lost weight. It turns out, her power wasn't in what she said, but in what stopped happening when she was gone. In a world fueled by emotion, Merkel ran on logic, on charts, on chemistry. Her instincts weren't loud. They were learned. She didn't feel history. She calculated it. Across years of unraveling, Angela Merkel held the thread of unity, of reason, of restraint. When others cut it, she tied it again until it was time to let go. She was no saint, no tyrant, no caricature. Angela Merkel was simply what history needed, a ballast, a hinge, a reminder that leadership doesn't always roar. In the great puzzle of Europe, she wasn't the showpiece. She was the connector, the piece that made others fit. Without her, the puzzle still exists, but less complete. Stillness is not weakness. Stillness is control, discipline, conviction under pressure. Merkel sat while others flailed, and that stillness held storms at bay. Some leaders light fires. She built foundations. She never tore down institutions. She reinforced them. That's why when Merkel stepped back, the house still stood. There was no show, no farewell tour, no self-glorifying memoir. She simply finished the work and left. Because her story was never about herself. It was about service. From Berlin to Brussels, from Moscow to Washington, she steadied them all, not through force, but through presence. In the wildest era of our lives, Angela Merkel was the axis. You can't sculpt silence, can't carve restraint, can't paint patience. That's why no monument can capture Merkel. But you'll see her in the way Europe still tries to hold itself together. Now she's gone, but her presence lingers. In cautious decisions, in quiet diplomacy, in women rising. She left no echo, only direction. A whisper in the wind that still shapes storms. She left behind no dynasty, no doctrine, no empire. Just a question. Can leadership still mean service? Can power still mean peace? Can calm still win? In a world addicted to fire, she was a candle, not bright, not blinding, but unwavering. And in the darkest rooms, that was enough to see the way. Merkel didn't entertain. She explained. Didn't seduce. She solved. She wasn't exciting. She was necessary. She made politics boring again. And in hindsight, that might have saved us. She was born behind the wall, raised in its shadow, but it never defined her. She didn't just walk through it. She built something better on the other side. Angela Merkel didn't shout, but she was heard. Didn't conquer, but she endured. Didn't seek legacy, but left one. In a noisy world, she proved quiet could still lead. And history will remember her for exactly that.